Hello, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, of course, depending upon where you are in the world today. Happy Friday, everybody. Thank you for being here. If you are catching us live, please comment below with #live. If you're catching this on the replay, please comment below #replay. I would like to take a moment to introduce my wonderful, beautiful panel of guests. Ladies, how are you today? Happy Friday.
Happy
Happy
Friday.
I would like to introduce each of them. We've got Melisa Keenan, we have Julie Walz, and we have Kristin Bentley. Welcome, ladies. Thank you so much for making the time to be here and for participating in episode 4 of the Empowerment Sessions Unfiltered. I appreciate each of you.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you, Brad.
My pleasure. So today is episode 4 of the Empowerment Sessions. Today's topic, we decided, is going to be how to maintain vulnerability during tough conversations, connecting to our authenticity and our intention. So I would love to start by asking each of you, we'll start with you, Melisa. How do you maintain vulnerability during tough conversations, during difficult conversations? And I know there are so many different types of difficult conversations, but in general, how do you maintain your vulnerability?
Well, I think the first thing is to know the audience, to know, gauge how vulnerable do I actually want to be with this person. But there's what I call intimacy or vulnerability with myself, and then there's vulnerability with the other person. And it's super key that I am attuned to my own feelings all the time. And I'm attuned to what's going on in my inner world all the time. But whether or not I share that varies.
Of course. Kristin, how about you?
Yeah, I just to kind of follow through on that one. And it depends on the situation too, right? It depends on what it is that you're being faced with, that you're needing to have these hard conversations. And I think when we are in that position with somebody, it does look definitely different if we have an intimate relationship with that person versus, let's say it's another parent at our child's school and we need to have a conversation. I kid you not, and it wasn't a hard conversation, but my daughter was taking her friends' lunches at school, right? And so I had to have a conversation with her mom the other day, and we're both those parents that are like, what did my child do? What? not quite the same, but it really does depend on the level of intimacy that you have with the person. And like Melisa said, it always starts out with that self-check and making sure that you feel really comfortable to be visible and in the level and degree that you're about to go in to be vulnerable. And in my space, it's interesting because it was in my marriage where that started, and it got me to a place where I am a lot more comfortable with being vulnerable. And when I say being vulnerable, I equate that to being authentic, just showing up as yourself and speaking what feels true to you. Not necessarily that you're going at it to put somebody else down or not validate their experience or how they're feeling in the situation, but just representing yourself fully and to a level in that circumstance that you feel necessary.
Julie, how about you?
Oh my goodness. I'm glad I'm kind of last because everybody's kind of spoke to everything that I was going to say. I first and foremost is be authentic, be vulnerable, be emotional. It's okay to be emotional. Know your audience, be intentional. I want to go back to what Melisa said. First and foremost, I love the idea of knowing your audience. I think, I always call them circles of trust, right? My sister and I talk about the circles of trust. So we've got your inner, your core people, and then it kind of breaks out from there. And I think that's really important. I also feel like, connecting with the trust factor, and then what Kristin said about it's a situational thing. I want to kind of go off of what she said about parenting. Being a mom of teens, close to being teens, we're starting to get into more of a stickier situations, and understanding that, I know we're not going to talk about religion and politics and all those fun little topics to talk about, but I really believe as I've gotten closer to my mid 50s, I'm really, really connected to my soul. I'm connected to what I'm passionate about. I'm connected to, my instincts a little bit more than what I was in my 30s and my 20s. And as a mom, as I've kind of learned, and there's no manual for being a mother, but, and, connecting to the religious piece of it all, I try to instill that in my kids. And then sometimes they do some stupid, can I swear?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Stupid shit. They do stupid shit. Okay. And then I, have to understand what was the intention behind it. And if they're doing it with other children, right, doing dumb things with other children, then I need to understand, how do I approach that with the mothers, right? And what does that look like? Are they, can I be vulnerable? Can I have that authentic conversation? And as I've aged, I am more saying, screw it. This is my kid, and I want to make sure that he's understanding his behaviors and the intentions behind those behaviors and the consequences to them. So having an authentic conversation with another mother, I go into it with a sense of, I'm going to be authentic. I'm going to align to my morals and values and belief systems, and then go forward with an understanding, an intention of, understanding around my intention, and then knowing I need to learn more about the audience I'm talking to. So, and where they're at. So I really think that's a great focus for me, as I really noticed that's kind of been a priority for me, being authentic and vulnerable in situations that have to do with my children.
Yeah,
no doubt.
So have you ladies found that as you've gotten older in your years, it's easier to have those difficult conversations? You're, like Julie said, you're at the point where I don't give a shit. I'm going to say what I'm feeling. Of course, going back to what Melisa said about judging who you're speaking with and whatnot, but taking that into consideration. But have you found it easier to now step into more of your authenticity as you've gotten older, and being less worried about what everybody thinks or what your audience thinks in terms of having those conversations? Melisa, you're smiling.
Yeah, I think I'm the youngest in the room. I just turned 35 like 2 weeks ago, which was so fun, and I can't believe I'm 35. But I guess there's like two parts that I hear in that. To me, vulnerability and expressing my thoughts and feelings isn't the same thing as like, I don't care how it's received. It's not the same thing to me. To me, yes, with age, this has gotten easier, but the only reason that's the case is because I didn't have the tools. Like nobody ever sat me down and said, you know what you're feeling is valid, and you have the space and permission to take up all the space you need with your big emotions. You've been through hard things, and we're here to just navigate those feelings with you. Like, that would have been amazing. So I really emphasize being that person with my children, and my children have like an ability to be like emotionally aware and expressive at the same time, way beyond anything I ever had. And I just didn't have the tools. But when I speak about, I guess because I always come from the stand of like, you're wanting to create more intimacy and connection. Like, usually we go into a conversation because we want a positive outcome. And if we go into a conversation and just kind of go like, I don't really care, like, I'm going to just say what I think, then you're playing darts blindly. You may end up hitting a target and may create a positive outcome, or you may end up hitting a nerve and it may blow up in your face, and then you're going to be like, oh, that wasn't what I wanted to happen at all.
And then having to backpedal.
Like, to me, there's a way of sharing my feelings, what I'm needing in a situation, what I'm desiring in a situation, what wasn't working for me in a situation, that like fosters not only an intimacy and connection, but fosters like a better outcome. And like, I could do that in any setting. I do that with my teammates, as well as my husband, as well as my children, as well as my friends, as well as like, I just yesterday called up a mom from the school that we hadn't really had a deep conversation before, but I was like, I know that I'm supposed to talk to you about this. And I, used it with her, because I don't have, I guess I trust in the communication skills enough that I don't have a huge fear of people having a massive reaction and having like not the outcome that I wanted. Yeah.
Kristin, how about you?
Yeah. And to kind of follow through with what you were just saying there. When we kind of move into it and just set the stage up front, like, hey, this is me speaking and I always say that, hey, I'm going to be very just open and transparent with you right now and share with you how I'm feeling about the situation. And if we kind of start it from that standpoint where they're being able to know, okay, right. And then making sure that our language is very like self-focused. So this is how I'm feeling about the situation, and not like pointing the finger kind of at the other person, and then giving them an opportunity to respond. And what is their feeling in the situation? What are their thoughts? How are they viewing it maybe differently? And actually try to accept that or take that in. And even if we don't agree, it's okay to have differing opinions, right? And you know how you've heard that people come into your life for purpose, right? And sometimes people come into our life and it's all about the connection that we create with that person because they're so like-minded. But then there's other people in our lives that are the opposite. They're almost like there's this mirror that gets put up in front of us when we have conversations with this person, and they kind of pull out these sensitive spots and areas and things like that from us. And of course, you know, there's a line, right? I think there's also some people that are, I'm referring to specifically in like a healthy situation, obviously,
Yeah.
right? A healthy relationship. But I think it's really beneficial to get that, because it's in being able to listen to somebody that we don't agree with, that's bringing forward something of ourselves that maybe we're just kind of like, oh, yeah, that's not my favorite part about myself. We can lean into it, right? And there's something so beneficial that can come out of that, because that person can feel heard, we can feel heard, and we can grow and evolve as well.
Yeah. I think that's really important, is that whole active listening component of the conversations, whether it makes you feel uncomfortable or not. You want that person that you're speaking with, or that group of people you're speaking with, to feel like they're being heard. And I found that so often people don't actively listen. This is a huge skill set that needs to be practiced by a lot of people, because I find that in some situations, people are just listening so that they can respond. And that's it. They're not actually paying attention to what's being said. Right? Have you guys encountered that?
Yeah, podcasting.
Yes, exactly.
You got to be an active listener and be a multitasker on the back end.
Yes.
I love it. I love what you just said. Yeah, it's true.
For sure.
when
Mary Addison says, yes, I feel transparency and open-mindedness is important for sure. Sorry, were you going to say something? Somebody start saying that?
When she was talking about interviewing, it's like you follow the conversation, right? You're
Yeah.
listening so intently that you're following it. Different kind of listening for sure.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. 100%. I've had guests tell me that they've been on podcasts and they didn't even feel like they were being listened to at all. And that's horrible for anybody to have to feel that way. When you're having a conversation with someone, you should at least feel heard. Right?
Yeah.
So
I mean, I know for myself, and I know you do, Brad, is that when I'm doing interviews, I'm very formatted. I have very formatted scripts that I follow. However, I'm always jogging down notes and making a mental note, or I go back to, I'm like, let's go back to that again. Let's talk deeper about that. But when I'm in a conversation, I noticed it, and you asked everybody about as you age. This is one of the things that I've noticed, and with being in this work, right, is that I've noticed that in conversations, I really do think active listening, there's a natural tendency to it, and then it's a learned behavior trait. That's my opinion on it. Okay. I've always been an active listener. I've always been a curious kid. I'm always like listening into mom's conversation with another adult. That's just been me my entire life. Some people don't get a rat's, patootie about it. So they're off doing their own thing. I was always an eavesdropper. Okay. And so I think that the active listening thing is, you got it and then you learn it. Right. But as I've aged, I've noticed that I'm more of an active listener, right? Intonations, behavior cues, all those pieces, I'm feeding off that energy and then deciding, do I take the conversation here or is it not worth it? And that's what I've noticed as I've aged is like, what do I want to spend my energy on? Do I want to fight this battle or do I not want to fight the battle? Because it's not in the end there's no outcome that's going to benefit any of us. So, and I also noticed that I hate to say this, but my friend circles have gotten very, very small. And I mean, I'm open to people, but it's kind of like, can I just sit in a jacuzzi and be next to somebody and not have to like entertain or talk their ear off? Now I've noticed now I'm like, I just want that energy next to me and I just want to be. And, you know, because we people all day long, we do things all day long. And oftentimes we just want to be next to somebody just for the comfort piece. So I kind of pick that piece. It's kind of an important part of that piece for me in regards to who I have in my circles. So
I think that's part of it too, right? As we get older, we start weeding out the people that don't align with us. And that's naturally going to happen as well as we grow into relationships or grow out of relationships. It just happens because your interests change, your alignments change, and that's just the way it goes, you know. Darcy says, I believe that discernment is needed in every conversation on when and how we share our authenticity. Mary Addison Yates says, also clarifying what you're hearing with the other person is important too, right? So these are all things. And I mean, are there any areas in particular, like when we think about intimacy, or as we're talking about parents with other parents, are there any areas in particular that you feel that you have a little more trouble with being your authentic self and having those difficult conversations over another? Melisa?
Yeah, my in-laws.
All right, let's go there.
Yeah, to be very vulnerable right now with you. My in-laws, I came from this very small kind of pieced together family that from small towns and small money and all of that. And my in-laws are not that way. It's a big family. They're all super connected. And it took me several years to even feel like I was wanted in the family. And it wasn't because they weren't kind. It was just because they were so different. And so still now, like, and also because my messaging is so bold, like I am often very against the grain and can make people uncomfortable. You know, I can, you know, shout from the rooftops about all the things I talk about, sex and healing trauma and et cetera, even to my own family members, even the family members who caused the pain. I can have these hard conversations, but put me in front of my in-laws and I'm like, do you like me still? Is it okay? Did I say too much? Like literally, I'm like that.
Yeah.
I love that. I let my husband have those conversations. I just,
Yeah.
you know, I feel like
Mm-hmm.
the dynamic is so different from the one that I grew up in that I just found it's better to let him take lead in that. So,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
but I mean, I can see how there's situations where that's not an option.
Yeah.
Sometimes,
You
yeah.
know? Yeah.
Well, and because intimacy is like it's like my breath. Like, so it means a lot to me to be connected to them. But yeah, my inner child comes through and is like, do they like me? Is it enough? Is it, you know? And honestly, like the times that I have like really put myself out there, for the most part, it's been received really well. One of my favorite things I ever did was I was so sure my mother-in-law did not like me for many, many years. And there was no reason. She wasn't doing anything. It was just me worried. And this was, you know, I was very young. My husband and I got married when we were 20. I was 20 and he was 22. So we were young.
Yeah.
But one day I was working with a therapist and she said, well, why don't you just ask her what she thinks you need to improve on? And I was like, You what? Should I do that? And so we did. We went and had a picnic, and I said, I wanted to have you on this picnic because I wanted to ask you what you think I could improve on. And she gave me something, and the rest of everything, she was like, it's really hard for me to even think of something, but I guess if I had one thing, this would be the thing, was something completely not what I thought it was going to be. Like, I was waiting for her to, tell me that I was a terrible housekeeper, or that, I should do this or that differently with my children. Or, I mean, I had a list of things that she was going to tell me, and it was nothing like that. And, it changed our relationship. And then I was able to be vulnerable with her and tell her, like,
Wonderful.
I thought you were going to say like 300 things. I really did. Yeah, it was so healing.
Oh, I love that.
you
I
go,
love
right?
that. Yeah. That's wonderful.
That's definitely one of those dynamics that's so super important, that you do want to feel it out, right? You want to tread so softly. My husband's family is very gentle. The women are very, very soft and sensitive and gentle. And so in my family, we're not like that at all. So they're very opposite in all the ways. Our 5-year-old daughter is very sensitive. And I tell my husband all the time, I'm like, she gets that from your side of the family. Like, I do now because I worked through that, but my family doesn't express emotions or feelings, and we don't talk about things. Everything is very surface level, and everything's okay. And if you're having a hard time, you just pretend you're right. You put it behind you and you put on the smile and you kind of plug through. And his family, they just wear it all right there.
Yeah.
They just wear it all in their sleeves, and they bring it to the table, and they love hard and strong. And it's so opposite of what I'm used to, but I love that. I love what it brings forward and what I can learn from it. So I love that you had that experience, Melisa.
How does that work? If your family and your husband's family get together how does that work? Like, what's that dynamic like?
It's really good. My parents listen, and his family talks. They're a little bit more of a talkers. Which is
It's
funny.
so interesting because you're a talker.
I'm a talker.
I mean, and I love the conversations that we had. So
Yeah.
that you're a really good talker.
My family is different. So we've got the in public, right? If you were
Mhm,
raised like
mhm.
that, like, don't behave that way in public. You better use your manners. And we were that family that during church, right? We'd be sitting in the pews and we'd be like smacking each other. My parents would have to sit between all of us.
Yeah.
Until I had my brother, the fourth, and then they couldn't do that anymore. But there was a certain way that we had to behave in public. And there's a certain way that you talk to people that you don't know on a personal level. But then it's like you get behind closed doors and it's a whole different thing. Like, there's 4 different conversations going on at one time.
Mhm.
And it's really big conversation, like really intellectual, intelligent conversation. And his family's is a lot of family gossip. They're from a small town, so a lot of gossiping. And did you hear about so and so?
Yeah.
Bless their heart,
It's so funny that you said that because my family we're small community, rural farm community. Everybody's related to everybody except for my family. So, but we're all, we're all pretty boisterous, and we sing and we're loud, and everybody's always talking over everyone. If somebody's mad at the other person, they'll let you know either by emotional shunning or, full blown anger being spewed at you. My husband's side's all about keeping peace and emotionally shoving it under the rug. So when I got with my husband, it took some time, but I started realizing that, hard conversations were kind of difficult, to be honest with you, in our partnership. And the problem is for me, and especially when I was in my late 20s and my 30s, I didn't wait for the right moment to have a conversation. I just walk through the door and be like, I'm pissed at you, or immediately, because that's how I respond, versus him being like, he waits for the most perfect window to open up and go, let's talk about something that bothered me 4 months ago. And I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? You took that long to bring it up. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? So we've kind of had to figure those pieces out. And yeah, we finance conversation is like, because his brain is very calculated and focused and processed, and mine's like, what? I can't buy the purse that I want. So I'm emotional, so, it's taken some time to really kind of figure that out. It's like a dance. So that's the area that I struggle with, to be honest with you. And intimacy, which I know we were going to talk about that, which that's another area, especially if you've got trauma, past traumas. That's an area that's a real sensitive topic, intimacy, sexual, relations with your partner or your spouse or whatnot. And that's another area that's a topic of conversation.
Yeah.
Melisa, a resident intimacy expert.
The
Take the
ability
wheel.
to be vulnerable, pertains to sex so much.
Yes.
If you find yourself struggling with vulnerability in any area of your life, you likely may struggle with it when it comes to sex, especially for women, because of course, we have all these extra pressures about how our body is supposed to look, how our naked body is supposed to look. And so, vulnerability, talk about vulnerability. I love some of Brene Brown's studies because it revealed some things that nobody was asking those questions about, for instance, just initiating sex. That is ranked literally as the highest, most vulnerable experience for people. And this is where, the term vulnerability can be so vague. It's like, wait a minute, what does it mean? Does it mean self-expression? Does it mean authenticity? Does it mean knowing your feelings? Does it mean being okay with discomfort? Yeah, it's like all of those things.
Yeah.
It's like, it's actually like, this is where the cinch is in my armor, and I'm going to show it to you, and I'm going to pray that you don't have an arrow that's going to kill me now.
Yes.
That's vulnerability.
Yes.
So, when it comes to our partner, that's honestly what I see most often is how difficult it can be to be truly vulnerable in those spaces. And a lot of times that, I don't know what it's like for you guys, but a lot of times that's simply because we take on what the other person says and think that we have to do something about it, or that it means something about us. So a lot of the times the work that I'm doing, the work that I had to do in my own marriage, and then the work that I'm doing with my clients, is helping them to get to a place where they can express themselves vulnerably, simply for the sake of connection, not any other goal, no other goal, just for the sake of wow, now I know how you feel. Thank you. Now I can share how I feel. And a lot of times that piece, being able to do that, changes what people experience in the bedroom as well.
So my experience was the complete opposite. So I was all about let's just go have sex. I don't want to have a conversation. I don't want to talk about my feelings. Let's go. Right. But it was when my husband would say, well, tell me how that makes you feel. And then he would stop and he wouldn't talk until I would start talking. And we had talked about that whole trauma, right? The trauma. So I'm a trauma survivor, like so many of us are, right? Mm-hmm. And for me, I didn't grow up talking about feelings. That wasn't something we did in my house. How are you feeling? I'm great. I'm doing wonderful. Everything is so well, right? That is the generational trauma that truly has been passed down from, I feel like, on both sides, both paternal and maternal sides of my family. And he would just be patient, right? He was so patient. And then eventually over time, because he gave me that space to open up and talk about my feelings, right? And I'd be like, you sure you just want to, you sure? Mm-hmm. No, well, let's talk about this, right? Mm-hmm. But I would start opening up and I would start communicating my feelings, and my husband is such a straightforward, blunt person. You always know how he feels, what he's thinking. And it's a blessing to me, because I feel like of all the partners I could have chosen, he's the perfect partner for me, because I needed that. That was where I was not strong. That was where I was lacking and needed to work on me, to understand that, no, that does matter. I am able to ask for the things that I need. I don't have to just give. I can receive too. and I can ask and I can share. And because he requires me to show up in such a true way to represent myself. And the thing is it's funny because he loves talking about these things, but he's not good at picking up how I'm feeling. So,
Isn't
right?
that common for most men?
That's fair. That's fair. I
Yeah.
feel like his might be slightly a little more challenged in that area. But he can't read my mind. And I kid you not, you all. I was on my bed one time, right? And he's downstairs and I'm just sitting here and I was so mad at him. I was so mad. I was fuming and I could feel this childhood wound just opening up inside of me and oozing. And I'm sitting here and all of a sudden I stopped and I said, Kristin, you're expecting him to read your mind right now. He can't read your mind. What are you thinking? He shouldn't just know. Why are you putting that kind of expectation on him?
Yeah.
So I went downstairs and at that point we had been married for like 6 years.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And I had been, like feeling hurt and rejected and all the things. And so now I have to, for him to understand, this is how I'm feeling right now. Will you please give me a hug? Will you please just tell me this is going to be okay? And he responds and he's really good at giving it back, but I have to ask. And isn't that interesting to think that that might be part, and I know Melissa's over there like, yes, yes, yes. Is that truly how it should be in all relationships? I'm thinking, yes, it should, right? We should all
Yeah.
adopt that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can't
Absolutely.
expect our significant other to read our minds. We can't, it's impossible. They can't read our minds. You have to tell them. But again, that comes down to that difficult conversation. How do you feel about telling? Is it going to be received the way I expect it to be received? All of these things start flooding in. It's like, fuck it. I'm not going to bother. I can't be bothered because I don't know how it's going to be received. But you have to. That's part of relationships, and not even just intimate relationships, but friendships, all of that. You have to be able to be open in that way and to be able to get vulnerable with people. But again, that depends on who you're surrounding yourself with as well.
Yeah.
Often we don't actually know what we need. Like you said, that second piece there, Kristen, and I think that shows like you've done a lot of inner work. Like that shows that you've done a lot of inner work because a lot of times we only know how we feel. You know what? Actually, it starts with we only know our story. We only know like things are horrible and we have all kinds of judgments and opinions and evaluations running. If you've done a little bit of inner work, you might be able to identify you have a feeling present as well. And a lot of people don't even go there, but even fewer people go to what do I actually need? And
Yeah.
that takes practice. So like if you're listening and you're like, man, you know what? I haven't been sharing but I don't even know what I need. It's okay to say, this is what I'm feeling and I don't even know what I need. That's okay to start there. The more like you start speaking that, the more you're going to become attuned to like, oh, like that's why our emotions are there. They're there to point us to what we deeply value, what is missing in a situation for us. Or if we're feeling a lot of joy, it's there to point to us what is there that's present that we deeply value. Like we're getting a lot of it and that's why we're feeling so good. So like the more that we kind of bring our awareness to that, we'll get to the place where we can express that. But sometimes we don't know, and that's okay too.
Yeah. Well, can I add a couple of things too? I
Yeah,
just
of
want to
course.
say, after Kristin was talking about, so one of the things, I know we talked about this in the pre-chat, but, and again, I'm not going to go down this road, but I was raised in a Catholic church right? And, premarital sex is no. And I'm a product of, the 80s where we don't talk about sex, right? So, and then if we do talk about sex, it's labeled as dirty. Okay. And so being raised up in that and not having a kind conversation around sexual intimacy and connection and understanding that I have a vagina that can be pleasured, right? And that versus, it's for baby making and everything else. It's one of those things that I remember having sex for the first time and then feeling robotic, like very robotic, because I wasn't supposed to have pleasure from it. So I know we can get deeper into this conversation, but, I think one of the things is it took a lot of time for me to kind of wrap my head around that ingrained belief system of, sex is for pleasure and I should be intimate with my partner, but it took me a very long time to connect to that. And then on top of that, being vulnerable in those situations and not locking up and freezing, you have to actively have some self-awareness around that. And see what you're doing, right? And and absolutely have an open conversation and be open with your partner, being open with my husband about sexual trauma, about the way I was raised, about the needs that I want in the bedroom. Cause we all have dirty thoughts, right? We kind of have an idea what we need, right? In the bedroom. We just don't know if it's going to be received, like you just mentioned. But I think as I've aged and have become more authentic to what I need for myself and my intentions in life and what I want out of life, what I want out of sex, I'm very vocal. So this is what I need. And it may hit every single sense. Like, I need you to kiss me this way. I need to feel your tongue this way, or I need you to say this to me, or I need you to touch me in this way that makes me feel safe. So all the senses comes to play for me and what I've done for my own self-healing work and working with a therapist around that. And then sometimes being vocal about, we have flashbacks. If we have had sexual trauma, we have flashbacks. So maybe there's a position that I don't necessarily like to be in because it takes me to a really dark place and it distracts from what the end goal is, to have an orgasm, right? So for me, and I'm sorry if I'm getting way too deep in this, but I think it's really important to work on some of these pieces. If you have struggled with those areas in life, right? Your upbringing, what did you talk about in your home? How was the vagina presented to you? And what does it mean to pleasure, and have those conversations. And if you have had sexual trauma, you need to talk to somebody about that because it impacts everything in regards to intimacy and even filters into other areas of your life. So
it breaks my heart because people will come to me and they won't disclose initially that they've had some kind of sexual trauma because they think it's a thing of the past. And so we'll be doing all this work together and, and I'm asking for all the things. And finally they're like, well, there was this thing. It always affects us until we do that work. And really until you kind of incorporate that, like I look at our past traumas almost like our past scriptures, if you will. It's like they are like, as sucky as they were, as much as we didn't deserve to have those experiences and stuff, they also are a space for lessons about who we are and, how we can grow and how we can turn around and help people. And so like, until we can really incorporate and feel like I can look back on that experience and feel a sense of understanding about what I experienced, like it's probably affecting our experience in our partnerships. So I love that you brought that up and that you were willing to be vulnerable enough to say, hey, this is what my journey has been like. And that there's probably people listening who needed to hear that.
Yeah. Well, I have a question for you because you have a ton of experience in this world, but for people that have had, sexual trauma and they're instinctive, of like, I am in this situation and I had this sexual trauma experience. I knew that I was in a situation that wasn't right, but my instincts were like, I don't know what to do. And then I couldn't get out of the situation. How do you see that filtering into, future partnerships and intimacies with their partners? Well, is it like the instinct drive still strong in there of like, oh, I just want to fight this or get out of this situation? Is it still strong?
It's different for everyone. Like, because the way that we react to and like process our trauma through time is different for everyone. So it could look like that. A lot of times I see people just leave their body when they're having sex with their partner because they know that they're supposed to. And on some level they want it because it's what a marriage is supposed to have. But but every other part of them is like, no, this isn't safe. So they just like check out mentally, emotionally, spiritually, which is the opposite of vulnerability, given what we talked about. And what's interesting about that too, is sometimes I've had people come to me who have said, I've never had an orgasm in my entire life. And, we work through that. But probably what's more confusing for people is the fact that they could be totally checked out and still orgasm because our bodies are also kind of mechanical. They do respond. And so that can also be confusing for people. So being able to, I mean, the biggest thing that I guide people to is tons and tons of grace and self-compassion. And then when you're actually really trying to create that intimacy and connection with your partner around physical intimacy, that this usually takes a lot of work on behalf of the man, because men, when they get in that mode, they just want to go and get to the end result. But to be able to make space and time to pause, to talk, to cry, to laugh, and then come back together. And it takes work, but it is so possible. And what's really interesting about that is really that's probably the most powerful way to heal from past sexual trauma, is to have somebody that makes me emotional, that you can be so safe with, that you can feel so held with, that you can feel so seen and known, that you can even have trauma and still like be loved through it and be so seen in that way. It's to me, it's like heaven on earth. Like, that's why we're supposed to get married. That's why why we have these beautiful unions, is so that we can heal these things, you know, in a partnership.
Yeah.
No, I love
And to
that.
take that a layer deeper, like, let's talk about body image issues, right? And for women specifically, I don't know if any of us are unscathed from that one. In 2019, remember back when, so Me Too was huge movement across the country. So I helped plan the first Me Too event in Tacoma, Washington. And in that event, the women that showed up, horrific stories. All body shapes, sizes, height, all of the things. And at the very end, and it was beautiful because they had the women put makeup on, and there was a professional photographer there, and they got to do a photo shoot and everything. At the end, there was a share, and the women would one at a time get up to share their stories. And it didn't matter what they looked like today. They could have been tall, beautiful, gorgeous, what everybody else is saying. I wish I looked like you. And they were standing there saying, I don't feel good in my body. I don't feel confident. I don't feel, because back when I was a kid, I was teased about this. Or they could be curvy and what the tall, thin women wish they looked like. And those women were saying, I don't feel comfortable because I was noticed too soon. There's always something that goes back to that whole body image thing. And so even for those, I mean, I would imagine that's a whole nother layer in addition to sexual trauma. But for those that haven't even experienced sexual trauma, there might be things too that they're just holding back and not fully showing up in the way that they could be either, for that reason. And what I've read is that men just want women to be confident. Like, you don't have to have the hourglass. You don't have to, they just want you to be confident in the bedroom, and that's it. And they're super attracted.
Which even confident in the bedroom
like, yes.
comes with its own like sort of you know, imagery. It's not like you need to be some kind of crazy vixen or something, like, you know, in bed and then like a PS goddess in the daytime. It's more about like, can you love yourself, and can you let yourself follow your pleasure? That's it. And it kind of ties back to something that you had said, Julie, about having to go through that journey to even allow yourself to experience pleasure, or even believe that you had permission, or that pleasure was even like something that was you know, God planned for you. Like, that is one of the most vulnerable things. And another thing that came from Brene Brown's research was that it's more vulnerable actually for us to share pleasure with someone, or share in our joys with someone, than it is for us to share in our sorrows or our traumas, which is fascinating to me. You know, when my husband and I started our healing journey and we could share our traumas with each other, I just thought, and people call that like trauma bonding, right? Like, that maybe that's not a good, that is a good thing to do. It's just that you don't want to only continue to recreate these trauma bonds and create trauma so that you can bond. But, you know, being able to bond through that trauma, I was like, how could anything be better than this? But then I found, oh, there's this whole other thing. Like, I would sing quieter in front of my husband. I would dance less in front of my husband. Like, there were all these things. And I can't tell you how many women have said, I refuse to have sex with the lights on. Like, it has to be pitch dark because of that body image stuff you're talking about, Kristin.
That's my wife right there.
So
100%.
it really is just, can I be in tune with my pleasure, and can I love myself? And one of my favorite things to say is, Fat people have great sex. Like literally,
Yeah.
there's a lot of fat people on the planet and they're all having great sex. Like, where did we
Yeah.
get the idea that your body needs to look a certain way to have
It's
great sex?
ridiculous.
It's dumb.
Yeah,
I
it is.
truly
love that.
believe. Yeah, I truly believe, honestly, what's in what we see, our imagery, Cosmopolitan, right? I don't know if y'all grew up with Teen Beat. I'm
Yeah.
really aging myself. Teen Beat, Cosmopolitan. There wasn't a, they were all Debbie Gibson, skinny looking, you know. I mean, that is what was the imagery that we've all seen growing, and that's what we're supposed to be like, right? That's what I know. What I ingrained in my head of I'm not supposed to be 5'3" with ginormous breast and a small, short waist with short legs. So you shame yourself because you didn't meet that expectation from what you're seeing, you know, in these magazines. And I think that was really big for a lot of my friends that developed and myself that developed body dysmorphia. So there's also, you know, I think a piece into what our caregivers taught us growing up, seeing my mother or my grandmother pinch her fat and say, wish I didn't have a double chin or whatnot. So, you know, there's power in that. I always make sure never, ever. I mean, as I've worked on my own, you know, it'll never go away. Body dysmorphia is for here to stay. It's just something I have to manage and be aware of. But I'm very mindful that this is something that my child doesn't have to suffer from. My daughter doesn't have to have body dysmorphia and struggle internally and mentally and emotionally and physically and you know, starve herself to death and do these crazy diets like I did, right? So I'm always mindful of, you know, healthy eating choices, right? But also in the same instance of like loving your body and how beautiful she is and how wonderfully smart she is and confident she is and powerful she is and all these other pieces that I wish I would have been given. My mom did the best that she could. And if she's tuning in, God help us all. But my mom did the best that she could. All right. You know, and from what she knows. And, but I know I wanted to do better because I was miserable in my 20s. And I look back at my 20s and think, damn, I had a good body.
See,
I mean,
that-
we tell
ourselves,
we tell ourselves lies though, because
Yeah.
I promise that even the women on those covers of the magazines, the women that are the most beautiful, supposed ideal bodies in Playboy, they do not see themselves. They look in the mirror and they don't see that in themselves. When we look in the mirror, we see the things that we want to change about ourselves. We never see that we like. And there's this true addiction, right? Women that get surgeries and then, right? There's something else I don't like about me. There's something else I want to fix. There's something else I want to do. There used to be this show on TV. I could not believe this actually aired. And I'm going to show my age now, Julie. I don't even remember when it came out, but it was called The Swan. Did any of you ever watch that show? It was a reality show. And they would have these women come on, and I kid you not, they would give them breast enhancements. All of them would end up being blonde afterwards. They would fix their teeth. They would do whatever surgeries on them to make them feel beautiful. They would send them to a personal trainer. They would send them to this personal trainer to transform into their new selves instead of having them go through therapy to learn how to love themselves. Because the reality is they're still going to look in the mirror and find something they don't like. Maybe they're going to be like, you know what, that freckle, that damn freckle, I've never liked it. That needs to go next.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
When is enough enough?
Sorry.
No.
I've seen all of this stuff as a male and as a boudoir photographer, like all the women who come through, there's something always, even doing headshots. I was doing corporate headshots and I had a woman say to me, oh, can you adjust digitally my eyebrow or my eye? One of them is a little bit lower than the other. Can you bring them up and make them? It's like, no, I don't. This is who you are. Like, I'm not going to digitally enhance who you are. Like this is who you are. We need to embrace that. And that is something very common. Like I said, I dealt with in boudoir photography as well. I tell all my clients, I am not, if you're looking to change, like physically change your body, after me to change it in the editing, I'm not your photographer, because I'm not going to do that. I want you to embrace who you truly are as a woman, embrace your curves, embrace your stretch marks, all of that stuff. And I'm not saying, oh, just get over it, just deal with it. And that's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm just trying to illustrate that this is something very common that I've seen as a photographer, that so many women come to me and, well, can we, I'm not your photographer. I'm very, very, very light-handed with editing. I'll remove, acne or whatever, things like that, but that's it. Your stretch marks are part of who you are. Those are beautiful. Leave them. That's you. I refuse to digitally edit and change someone, the shape, any like that. I'm not the photographer for you then. If that's what you're looking for, I'm not your guy. Sorry. That's
Yeah.
not what I do.
I have an author who's in her mid-50s, and she had significant body dysmorphia. She said that she was, for most of her life, pushing 300 pounds as an adult. And it took her a while to realize the reason why she was doing that was to keep herself safe because she was a trauma survivor. So it was to keep her safe. And she ended up, her doctor, for differing reasons, not necessarily like, you just got to be skinny. She did end up having the surgery to have her stomach, right? And she says that now, I have the sagging skin, she's thin, but she said, I put on a bathing suit and my skin sags, but I'm going to keep it. I'm going to
There you
keep
go.
putting on the bathing suit, and I'm going to go to the pools, and I'm going to show up because I earned that saggy skin.
There you go.
It reminds me of what I've gone through in my life, what I've overcome, and where I am today. And it's a reminder, and I'm going to embrace it.
I've had women who are bigger. I've had women who are the typical magazine type body. There's issues. It doesn't matter what size you are. There's going to be issues. But I can tell you that when my clients walk into the studio, of course, there's vulnerability there. They're feeling very vulnerable because most of my clients are getting into their underwear and bra or different lingerie for their shoot. So there's that first. But I can tell you 99.9% of the time, by the time they leave that studio, they're a completely different woman. They feel like the confidence is just through the roof.
That's wonderful.
After their shoot. And that, I honestly believe that every single woman on this planet should experience a boudoir shoot at least once in their life. It will change your life. It will absolutely change your life and change the way you view yourself. It is so fucking powerful. It is unbelievable to see I get to witness transformation unfold right before my very eyes. And that is powerful. But to see that transformation throughout the shoot and then see them leaving the studio, it's like there's a bounce in their steps. They're a completely different woman. It's beautiful to see.
I know that we're almost up on time. Can I completely just flip this whole conversation on its head? Okay. So here's my thought. As we're talking about this idea, this thought came to me, and I'm thinking, okay, we're all creatures we like to feel safe. And in that space of feeling safe, we have a need for control. So could it be that we become so obsessed with our exterior selves because in our minds, we feel like we have greater control over that than we do into changing and working on who we are inside? So we focus on the outside and what people can see instead of working on the inside, because we can control that. We can change our hair color, right? We can get the nose job. We can go to this, like, I am so pasty white for living in Nevada. I could go to Springtown and I would look like I just came out of vacation, right?
Right.
We can change all of it. We can brighten our teeth. We have control over that.
Yeah.
That's easy. All we do is spend money. But doing the actual work, that's hard. That's the hard stuff. And it causes us to look in the mirror and look so much deeper than the surface. And that scares the living fuck out of us.
And it's ugly. And it's ugly.
So ugly.
You don't want to see that ugly stuff, right?
Ooh.
Yeah.
But you have to do the work. You have to.
And I want to say this. Men are not exempt from this.
No.
I mean,
absolutely
I could
not.
get my husband on conversations, my children, my boys. the vulnerability that they have to place. I just want to put that out there because I think it's really important. Body dysmorphia amongst women or men. I did a podcast episode on that, is huge. Okay. The pressures to be muscle fitness winner of the year every single day and going to the gym and all the things that they do. I mean, it's literally, I think to be honest with you, I think it's not healthy. I mean, it's crazy unhealthy. And I just encourage, my son's starting to get into weightlifting and he's like, Mom, what do you think about this? I'm like, stop, just go there to be healthy. Don't get crazy. And I think it's this mentality. Once you get in the gym, it's like this competition thing, right? It's driving the testosterone up and their dopamine is, off regulated. And so I do think that there's, a lot of that going on in men, and it's hard to watch, it's hard to watch because you can't wrangle them back from it. Right. It's true though. Right?
Yeah, you're right. Men deal with it too, 100%.
For what it is and do some healing around it, but it's a difficult.
I really think you're spot on, Kristin, and it's our bodies. And if we're not obsessively focused on our bodies, then we're obsessively focused on, building our businesses, building wealth, and or any other external things that would seek to pull us out of ourselves. And I think, I used to look at doing inner work like there was this tiger clawing in the closet, and I was like, oh my God, open the door and then like close it as fast as possible. And I don't even see it that way anymore, because the more that you understand yourself and begin to love and trust and accept yourself, it's like, I've had to make space for paradox. I know that I have yucky thoughts and I have beautiful thoughts, and I have feelings I hate and I have feelings I love, and I have all of that inside of me. And it's beautiful. It's actually beautiful. Like I can dance and play in that and who I am. And so then it becomes like, vulnerability, like the only time I hesitate when it comes to vulnerability, I shared earlier, was when I start to compare what other people might think. Because I've got this in here in me, and it's like I'll share and I write books. We're all like on shows, writing books, doing podcasts, doing TV shows, and we'll share. And it comes from like getting into that place in yourself where it's like, actually, this is beautiful. And the paradox is amazing. And like, what a gift I am.
What a gift we all are. Absolutely.
Exactly.
100%.
Exactly.
We just have to embrace that gift. And that's the tough part.
Yeah.
Well, on that note, thank you all so very much for tuning in today. I hope you all enjoyed the conversation. And of course, a very special thank you to all of my guests, Melisa, Julie, Kristin. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today and share your thoughts and your experiences all around this topic of vulnerability. I appreciate each and every one of you for taking the time to be here with me today and share. I hope you all have an amazingly beautiful rest of your Friday and an awesome weekend. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Happy Friday and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays, everybody.
Yes. Happy holidays.